Hi everybody, this is Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest and Elegant Weapons, and you're listening to Sonic Perspectives.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another interview of Sonic Perspectives. I'm Rodrigo, and my guest today is Richie Faulkner from Judas Priest. Richie has a new band called Elegant Weapons, and we're going to talk about that and a few other things. Richie, thank you for joining us.
Rodrigo, thanks for having me, man. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here, man. How you doing?
Yeah, pretty good, pretty good. Well, let me start by the most important issue here. How are you doing health-wise?
I'm doing okay. Thanks for asking, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a bit crazy the last couple of years, you know, with what happened. But I've had a great support team. I've had some great support from the fans, and it's really got me through it. So I'm doing good. Thank you.
Yeah. And I mean, after all you went through, do you think your perspective about things has changed in life anyway? Maybe your priorities have changed now, or?
It's a good question. I think that it really brings home the fact that we're not here forever, and you know, we might not be here tomorrow. In my case, I almost wasn't, you know, so it kind of definitely brings it home to you. I've kind of immersed myself in the music, you know, with Elegant Weapons and with Judas Priest, and we got back straight, you know, we got back out on tour after the episode, and we're working on the new Priest record. So it kind of gives me focus. It gives me a motivation to kind of do what you do and do it now, because you might not be able to do it in the future. We don't know what's around the corner, so it kind of gives you a kick up the arse, really, you know.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, let's talk Elegant Weapons first. I mean, how did each member get involved? And tell us about the lineup for the live shows, which is a bit different, right?
Yeah, well, I got Scott, Rex, and Ronnie involved. Everything was written and recorded during the pandemic, really. So everything was written first. And I've always kind of promised Scott Travis that if I ever did anything outside of Judas Priest, he'd get first refusal, really. So that Scott was a no-brainer. And I called Rex. Rex had been a friend of mine for a little while, and I called him up, and I literally asked him if he'd be on the record. And to my surprise, and you know, huge gratitude to Rex, he said yeah. So and Ronnie was the same, really. I, you know, needed a singer. Called up Ronnie, explained the situation. Everything was already, as I said, written before. So it was a case of getting those guys to record it. And then, as you said, obviously Rex is doing Pantera, Scott's doing other things. So me and Ronnie got Christopher Williams and Davey Rimmer together to move the band forward into the live arena. So that's what we're doing. And I've been incredibly fortunate to have such a group of musicians involved, both on the record and in the band now going forward playing live shows. So I'm incredibly fortunate, incredibly grateful, and looking forward to see what the future holds.
Yeah, and well, you're preparing for a lot of festival appearances in a few months. A few shows with Pantera, others with the Winery Dogs as well. What can the fans expect in terms of set list, considering you only have the first album released?
Yeah, it'll be like early Van Halen, where you do a few of your own songs and then the rest is covers. You know? But no, you're right, because we've only got the first record out. We've laid the foundations for the second record, but I don't think anything is going to be quite ready for the live circuit. But so it will be, you know, most of the first record. You know, we might touch on a little bit of you know, the other bands that we come from. We don't know yet, but that might be. We're not doing 2-hour sets, so we should be fine.
Right.
No, I think the set lengths are kind of appropriate for the amount of material we've got. But you know, I've lost you. There you are. But you know, the great thing is as well, it was a priority for me to have a band that plays live, that records albums, that evolves into the future. And you know, with Ronnie, with Christopher, with Davey, myself, hopefully our characters can kind of come together and create a new character. And it's interesting to see how that character evolves through live shows, through new albums and into the future. So that's what we're looking at doing.
Yeah. Well, part of me thinks this is you preparing something for the future when Priest is no longer around. Kind of like what Zakk Wylde did with Black Label Society when he was playing with Ozzy still. Am I right in saying that? Or
Yeah, it's you know, I've never thought of it as anything other than something that would continue on into the future. When I first joined the band, when I first joined Priest, I had a conversation with Glenn Tipton, and he said to me he wishes that, you know, the band had 20, 25 years left, but that's not the case. It was the farewell tour at the time. The band were 40 years in. They're now 50 years in. Luckily, we've still got Priest writing new records and touring. So the world is grateful for that. But it was always conscious, really, that a conscious thought of mine that one day Priest isn't going to be around, and what am I going to do to continue what I do? So, you know, obviously, as I said, Priest is still around. We're still looking at doing things in the future. But then if and when that day comes, when they decide to retire, hopefully the groundwork's been laid and I've sowed some seeds, as you said, like Zakk, with my own thing to take that into the future.
Yeah. Well, in Priest, you have two guitars, and with Elegant Weapons, it's only you. I guess that will probably change your approach a little bit to fill out the sonic space live, right? Is this something you're worried about or excited about, having just you on guitars?
I think it's a different approach, you know, to, as you said, to what I'm used to with the two guitars. So yeah, I'll have to fill a bit more space. And again, we'll see how that transpires on the live circuit. We've had a few rehearsals and it sounds great. It's different. It's like the way Queen, it doesn't sound like Queen by any means, but in the same dynamic, like Queen on record sounded different to Queen live. It was a different experience, you know. So I'm all for that. If it gets to the point where I think, you know, if we're doing new material that needs another guitar, we might look at getting another guitar player or whatever it may be. So I'm not against that dynamic, but it's sounding good at the moment, and it just makes me think a little bit different about what I'm playing and where I'm playing it. So it's good for me to think like that. Really keeps you on your toes and keeps it fresh.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about a few songs from the album. First of all, Blind Leading the Blind. I love the cartoon on the video. It's simple but very effective, that one. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah, the message of the song was kind of strong. It was an easy message to grasp. And no disrespect to pigs. I love pigs, but pigs just seemed like a good animal to have it in the lead role. And in the video, it's kind of political, but it could be religious. It could be whatever it is. And it's just basically someone leading people that have their faith in them that don't really know what they're doing. And to be honest, you know, it doesn't have to be so dramatic. I mean, I'm a fairly new father. I've got a 2.5-year-old daughter, and to be honest, I'm trying to lead her, but I've got no idea what I'm doing either. You know, so it does, you know, but I think for the purposes of the video, it's a bit more dramatic when it's in a political form like that. But so yeah, that's what it's about, and the videographer did a great job, and it came together really well.
Yeah, well, I'm a father as well. I'm of an 8-year-old, and
wow.
I guess you learn from experience. Don't worry about that.
Exactly, but no one tells you really. No one kind of gives you a book and says, you know, you got to, as you said, you got to figure it out as you go along.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, tell me about Do or Die. I mean, there's a trick you do on the initial riff that always catches me off guard. I think you change the accent on the riff when the other instruments kick in, right?
I don't know, man. I think you're giving me more credit than I'm due. You know, to me, it's kind of like a very, not a very 80s riff, but a kind of very Priest-centric kind of Free Will Burning type riff. It's a fast song. I actually, when I was talking to Andy Sneap, the producer, about the song and including it on the album, I was a bit anxious as to whether it was too much like a Priest experience. Right. And he said, you know, all this record it comes naturally, it comes organically. I've been playing with Priest for almost 13 years now, around 10 years at the time. And he said, why wouldn't you have that kind of influence? Why wouldn't that be a part of your DNA? So if it was a good song, go with it, you know. And so we did, and it came out really well. The video came out really well. It's a fun video. again, the video is kind of, it references back to the arcades of the 80s and the neon and stuff like that, which we all love, you know. So it was really, really great fun to do.
Yeah. Well, I had a question about your membership or association with Priest down the line, but I'll ask it now. I mean, having been with them for over 10 years now, for me, it's safe to say you have a sense of belonging to Priest as much as any other member. Is it different for you now? I mean, compared to when you joined, or not really?
Yeah, I think you get more
Comfortable. Yeah.
You get more, well, just more involved in the, you know, when I first joined, it was more about playing the stuff right, you know, and getting it right and getting the dynamics right and upholding the legacy. And I think, you know, over 10 years in, it's still about that, but there's more of a focus on what are we doing next? What are we providing for the fans, the experience, the live show, the album, you know, how can we do things better? So you become more embroiled in the machine of it all, you know, the machine that drives Priest, I think, for 50 years just is the passion for the fans and the music that we create. And I can see that, you know, people ask me all the time what I think the secret is, and it's definitely part of it is the passion for what they do. So you become more embroiled in the passion and the output that we're going to put out is in terms of music and experience, and it becomes more about that, you know, rather than just I better play the songs right, you know.
Yeah, understood. Well, back to the album that we're promoting right now, I wanted to talk about Ghost of You, which to me is the biggest curveball on the album. It's a bluesy track. It kind of reminded me of Nina Simone's Feeling Good just a little bit, even though the mood is different, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really heavy into ballads, you know. But if they jump out, then, and it's, again, if it's a good song, then I'll go with it. And Ghost of You was a little bit different to what I usually do. It's got a bit of a different tempo. The chords are interesting for me anyway. And ultimately it was a good song. I liked the song, and it was different enough, but it was in the right attitude for what the album needed. And again, so I went with it. I think it's a beautiful song, and it's I can see it brings a lot of imagery to mind. You know, the Ghost of You. I can't escape the Ghost of You. We've all been there. Whether it's, you know, someone that passes away or a relationship that's not there anymore, and you keep getting reminded of that person. We've all been there. So I thought it was like a universal theme as well. So yeah, again, went with it, you know.
Yeah, and Ronnie does bring that one to life for sure. It's the highlight for him in the album. For me, it's this song. Yeah.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, there's a couple of moments on that song where it's just the guitar and Ronnie singing, and you know, that's when he comes into his own. You know, not many people, I don't think, can sing like that and carry something the way Ronnie can. There's not many singers on, you know, there's a few of them, but not many, and he's one of them.
Yeah. And White Horse is probably my favorite, I think. It's a melting pot of influences. It starts with a Hammond organ that could be from a Deep Purple song, and the riffs, again, end up sounding like Priest a little bit, right? Yeah.
You know, you're the second person that said that. No one's mentioned White Horse up until today, and you mentioned it, and the guy that was interviewing me before mentioned it as well, and I'm really glad, because it's one of my favorites on the record as well. I love the experience of songs that they're not. I'm a big pop guy, so I love 80s pop and stuff like Duran Duran. So I like the pop experience, but I also like the journey. There's metal songs and heavy rock songs. They take you somewhere else. They're not radio songs by any means. They go somewhere else, and they might be a bit of a longer experience. But I like that, you know, the light and shade. And White Horse for me is one of those. It's got a lot of twists and turns and different parts. And again, Ronnie's fantastic in it. He kind of brings it all together. So I'm glad you mentioned that one. Thanks, man.
Good stuff. Yeah. Well, tell me about Horns for a Halo, which is like Tony Iommi crossed with Alice in Chains a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it. I mean, I've said it before. They're all parts of my musical makeup, you know, Black Sabbath, Tony Iommi, Alice in Chains, Metallica, that sort of stuff. I remember when I wrote the original idea for Horns for a Halo, you save the file and you have to save it as a name. So I saved the working title was Iommi, because I thought this just really conjures up something that Iommi might do. I mean, he's leagues above. But like, if I could just, you look to your idols for how they wrote music that made you feel a certain way, and it made me feel a certain way, and it made me feel like those Sabbath songs did when I first heard them. So I called it Iommi, and then obviously later on it became Horns for a Halo, became the title track of the record. And the imagery and the message behind it as well, I thought was interesting. So that's one of my favorites on the record too.
Yeah, I love the cover too. What kind of input did you give to this cover art?
Well, I did it. It was on AI. It was on AI is a bit of a controversial subject at the moment in terms of if it's taking work away from artists. But what I did was I gave our artist some AI designs that I'd made for direction. And he said, well, why don't we use what you've done, because it's great, and it made a couple of changes on it, so it wasn't completely AI based, but that's how it came about, really. It was just, I used that AI tool to get out the images that I had in my head to submit to the artist, and it was him that said that use the AI.
Right.
So that's what it is. But it's got the demonic, and it's got the angelic, which the Elegant Weapons has got as well, the juxtaposition between good and evil, light and dark, beauty and brutal, whatever it may be. I like that, and so it kind of contained that well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And well, I like the choice of Lights Out as a cover as well. I mean, you can't really go wrong with UFO, right?
I'm a massive UFO fan, massive Schenker fan. I love, Phil Mogg, all those guys, Pete Way, massive influence. And I actually tried a couple of covers out. There was, I was playing around with a couple of covers at the time, and Lights Out just seemed to be the perfect choice. And obviously later on, with Ronnie coming on board as well, and the link to Michael, it was even more appropriate. But it's fairly true to the original. The tuning's different. A lot of I think the whole album's drop tune a whole step, so that's different to the original. But the solos are different. The solos are completely improvised, so it's different in that respect. But hopefully, it's true enough to the original, but is different enough to be its own thing. So hopefully, people can judge it as they will.
Yeah, of course. And well, when I think of you, what comes to mind immediately is a Flying V with a Marshall amp. Do you use anything else to write? Do you write on acoustic guitar or?
Not really, no. I've got a lot of guitars around, so I can just pick one up if I get an idea. But this record was recorded solely on one guitar and one amplifier.
Wow.
Yeah, it did the job, And again, I'm not really, even the ballad was recorded on an electric guitar. I'm not against record or using an acoustic guitar as a tool. So maybe the next album, if there's a texture that needs an acoustic guitar, then I'm all for it. But I'm just not drawn to the acoustic in the same way that I am an electric guitar. So I've got there's one in the corner. I'm looking at it right now. There's an acoustic guitar. If it needs, it's kind of waving at me. Wants me to use it. But
right.
But yeah, primarily it's the electric guitar that I'm attracted to, and it was just the one Flying V that I used for the whole record.
Right. And you mentioned Duran Duran. I mean, I'm curious about bands or guitar players that people will be surprised to know that you like or you're influenced by.
There's probably a few of them. I mean, Duran Duran is probably. I mean, I know a few people know that I'm into Duran Duran and that sort of stuff. I mean, I grew up in the early to mid '80s, and that stuff was everywhere. Like Ultravox and Flock of Seagulls and Bryan Adams. I'm a massive Bryan Adams fan, and I went to see Bryan Adams when I was 7 years old. I think it was Keith Scott on guitar. I'm into bands like there's a band called The Midnight, which is kind of like a synth wave. I love that kind of experience, and like Blade Runner, Vangelis.
Right.
that kind of thing. It's things you can that are not necessarily heavy rock or metal that take you elsewhere into a different experience. And I can put on like the Blade Runner soundtrack and just get lost. You know, if I'm painting or you know, just whatever it may be, I can put something like that on and just get lost in it. So yeah, maybe that sort of stuff people will be surprised to hear.
Right, right. And on a personal level, you lived in Sweden for a few years. Having visited there myself, I'm amazed at how many great metal bands come from that place. I mean, to what do you credit that?
That's a good question. That's sorry, man, my battery. It's a really
Sure.
good question. I don't know where that kind of stuff happens. I mean, if you take Birmingham, when Priest were born, you can kind of you can see, you know, post-war, it was maybe dark. You know, there was like an industrial type scene going on. You can see where Priest might have got that sort of stuff from. But then other countries and other stuff like that, no, it's hard to tell really. I mean, like In Flames and Ghost, there's always been a healthy rock scene from Sweden. And I don't know really. I don't know what to attribute it to. It's just like people with good ideas. Maybe that's just all it is, you know.
Maybe. And when it comes to Priest, I mean, I really liked Redeemer of Souls, but honestly, Firepower took me completely by surprise. I wasn't expecting to like it so much. It took the band to a whole other level of popularity, and you know, the reception from the fans was amazing. To what do you credit that? I mean, did you perceive it the same way or not really?
Well, from what I can remember, we went into it the same way as we did with Redeemer of Souls, and probably, you know, and with the latest Priest record as well. It's like, how do we make it better? You know, quote unquote better, like better songs, better songwriting, better sounds, better performances. You always try and do something better, you know, whatever that may be. So we went into it the same way, really, just trying to produce something that was better than the last one. And the songs obviously are different, quote unquote. You know, some people might prefer the Firepower songs, but I think you just go in with the same mentality of let's make this better than the last one. But you're right, it really connected with a lot of people around the world, and we played a lot of those songs. Usually, on Redeemer of Souls, I think we played 3 songs off of the new record live, maybe 4. I think it was 3. But with Firepower, I think on the whole run, we were able to put 9 songs from the record, not all at once, obviously, but like throughout the tour, we played 9 songs from that record because it was connecting so well. So that was an indication, really, of how well it had connected, and we were able to play those songs, and people were singing them back to us. You know, they knew them. So yeah, and with the latest Priest record, we're just doing the same with that. You know, there's no concept other than let's make this one better than the last one.
Right. And in other interviews, I know you said the word progressive and people freaked out about it. I mean, what is this? Priest is gentle giant now? I mean, what's going on? But has there been any update in the tentative release date for the album, or how is it progressing so
far? No release date as yet. We know when we would like to have it out. I think we've still got some vocals to finish off, and then it's mixing and mastering and packaging and artwork and stuff like that. So it's almost there. It's in its final furlong, so to speak. As far as a release date, we don't know. And the progressive thing, you know, you get pulled apart, you know, in the internet these days. It's not. I'm looking at you. By the way, it looks like you've got a pair of wings there. That looks amazing. But like, it's not a Rush record by any means. It's not like it's not Dream Theater or anything like that. It's Judas Priest, and I would say progressive in the same way the Sinner or Tyrant was progressive. There were more twists and turns musically. It wasn't just, like I mentioned earlier on, it wasn't the pop sensibility of British Steel or Another Thing Coming or something like that. It's got a few more twists and turns. So, and the Priest came from the progressive blues. There's elements of progressive stuff all over their music. So, you know, people freak out because they want to, I think. But yeah, it's not a Rush record; it's a Priest record, but it's definitely got progressive elements in terms of the journey of each song.
Good stuff, good stuff. And I wanted to talk to you about some of the other work you did. I mean, I saw you in 2008 in São Paulo with Lauren Harris. I think that was your big break, right into, you know, more of a mainstream kind of band. What was it like being in that band? And did Steve Harris ever play with you guys in a rehearsal kind of scenario or not?
He did, yeah. There was a couple of gigs I think he did with us in England somewhere. He got up and played some songs with us, and I think
Oh,
he
yeah.
played on the record, if I remember rightly. He played a couple of cover songs on Lauren's record. But I mean, as far as you know, I was in my late 20s. I was on the road touring with Iron Maiden around the world on the Flight 666 plane, playing to thousands of people. It was an education, really. You know, you can imagine being part of a machine that big and so professional, and that meant so much to millions of people around the world, was just awe-inspiring, really. I still speak to Steve every now and again. I still speak to Lauren every now and again. Steve's doing his own thing outside of Maiden as well, which is interesting. So yeah, they're extended family, you know, both Maiden and the Harrises. But yeah, it was an incredible education, and one that it's an experience I'll never forget.
Yeah. And speaking of that time, I think we have a friend in common. My friend Guzman Santo was a singer of Revolution Renaissance. He's now with Human Fortress. Yeah, yeah. He told me to say hi, by the way.
Oh, brilliant. Say hi to Gus. I haven't seen him for a while, but I keep up to date. I see him sometimes on the social media. He pops up and that's Gus. You know, what's he up to? So say hello for me.
Yeah, will do. And well, famously, you wrote songs for Christopher Lee's metal album. How did you approach that, and what was it like working with him?
Well, he was a sweetheart, and his whole team were great. I always remember that the songs were kind of written, but they were written for like an orchestra. So there were very, violins and cellos, and they wanted them to be played by a band. So they needed riffs and parts, drum parts and stuff like that. So it was really interesting to kind of come up with those. And I remember the first lot of ideas that I sent back to Christopher and his people. They said they wanted it even more metal. So I said, okay. Wow. So so I made them more metal, and that's what they wanted. So I think at the time he was early 90s at the time. So he'd been through a lot. He had a big life. So it can only serve as an inspiration, really. Being 90 years old, still doing stuff like that, it can only be an inspirational thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that was awesome, by the way. A metal album by a guy who's 91, 92 years old. Incredible. Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm sad in a way I didn't get a chance to play on it. I done all the music and whatever, and then Priest called me, and I had to go and do that. But but the guys that played on the record, it came out really well, and Sir Christopher sounds as majestic as ever. So it was a great thing, I thought.
Yeah. And I know you were a Priest fan before joining the band, of course, and I bet you have a few hidden gems from their catalog that you'd love to play. Is there any song that still bugging them to play live that hasn't happened yet, or?
Yeah, one of them is Reckless from the Turbo album.
Oh,
again, like I keep, I'm a 43-year-old guy from the 1980s, so I was brought up in that era. So we played Reckless in rehearsals for the Firepower tour, if I'm not mistaken. And for one reason or another, we didn't include it in the set. I think the set was too long. We had to drop some songs off it, and that was one that got cut. But I'd love to play Reckless with the band live. One of my favorite tracks from the Turbo record.
Yeah, that'd be great. And a few months ago, when the world was still coming out of COVID, there was a rumor about a tour with Maiden, and I think Megadeth was also mentioned. Was there any truth to that, and what would it take for a tour like that to happen?
If you don't mind, I'm just gonna my battery's gonna go. I'm just gonna plug in my phone.
Sure.
I mean, as a fan, I mean, Excuse me, I'm probably got you've probably got my phone up my nose at the moment. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I just don't want the phone to die. As a fan, I mean, I couldn't imagine a better tour than Maiden and Priest. You know, I think it was an idea that was thrown around that again the internet got hold of and did what the internet does.
Yeah.
Will it ever happen? I don't know. I'd like to hope so. Maybe we could do like a big four of British metal, you know, instead of Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. Maybe it could be like Maiden, Priest,
Saxon.
Who would the fourth one be? I don't think it should be. You know, who would the fourth one be? I think it would have been Motorhead. Maybe.
That was
obviously they're not with us anymore, but you know, so that's where the discussion starts. You know, if it doesn't, I don't think it should be just Priest and Maiden. I think it should be more of a big four or a big, however many experience. You know, there's early Def Leppard was kind of metal, but would they be up? I don't know if they would be considered, but it's a good talking point and one that there's been many discussions about who it would be, but Priest and Maiden for sure. I mean, I'd love to see that as a fan, let alone be a part of it, you know?
Yeah. Well, before we finish up, let me go back to Elegant Weapons for a bit. I mean, I know there are plans for a second album already, but who do you think will play in it? Is it Rex and Scott or Dave and Chris?
Well, no, obviously, the way the band is now, we're going to evolve over the live shows and into the future. So it wouldn't make sense really to not have those guys on the next record. We're gonna grow as a band into the future. So that's the band that should go in and record the next record. I've already got Christopher. He's already recorded the drums for the next record, and I've recorded some of the guitars. So yeah, that's what it's going to be. You know, I think that makes sense to keep the band as it is now. Unless anyone leaves or whatever, but you can't predict the future. But I think it would be the right thing to do to keep the band on the record that's going to evolve into the future now.
All right. So you're playing a few festivals in Europe. There's nothing set in stone for the US or Canada yet. I'm in Canada, by the way. I'm in Toronto, but I'll keep my fingers crossed for you guys to make it up to these shores. Yeah,
that's definitely you know, a goal of ours. We're starting in Europe this summer, and then hopefully we've got some feelers out for some opportunities in the States and Canada moving forward. You know, we want to take the band as far as we can. You know, maybe over to Asia as well, but wherever we can. So we're looking at getting over to the US and Canada at some point, should we be able to.
Excellent. I'll keep my fingers crossed. Okay.
Nice, man. We're looking forward to seeing you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Richie, for your time. All the best with Elegant Weapons, the upcoming Priest album and tour, and everything else.
Thank you, Rodrigo. It's been a pleasure, man. Take care now.
Cheers, man. Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.